Please allow me to extend my personal thanks to the stakeholders and customers of the Navy Special Emphasis Operations who have taken time out of their busy schedules to be here today. I also wish to thank the local members of the Defense Contract Management Agency community who are in attendance and the members of NSEO who have traveled to be here today. A special thank you goes to my family and friends who were able to attend. In particular, I would like to thank my father-in-law, Chuck Bowling, who traveled from Chiang Mai, Thailand to be with us today. It is an honor and humbling that the senior leaders from each of the Navy Special Emphasis Operations customers are present for this assumption of command. From Naval Reactors, Mr. John Corey. Thank you, sir. From Naval Air Systems Command, Captain Mark Gindell. As we are busy, two members were scheduled to be here but could not, and I want to mention them because they are our customers. From NSEO AOC, Ms. Sharon Smoot, and from Naval Supply Systems Command, Captain Kaplan. And I'll catch up with them later. I deeply appreciate the remarks of Captain Sidney Kim, Defense Contract Management Agency Eastern Region Commander, for speaking on the behalf of DCMA. Admiral Arzali, I'm very grateful and deeply moved by your words. As discussed, we previously served together when I was a brand new engineering duty officer qualifying at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. He gave me great advice and counsel then, and I look forward to more advice in this tour, sir. There are many people whose love and support enabled me to have this opportunity to stand before you today assuming the command of NSEO. Each of the commanding officers and flag officers that I have worked for over the past 25 years have molded and shaped my leadership style and afforded me the opportunities necessary to achieve command. Their lessons were both positive and negative. Sometimes the lessons learned from a particularly challenging experience were not realized until years later. Three people have played a key role in my standing before you today. My mother, Beverly Stetler, who did not think I was crazy when I announced that I wanted to go to the Naval Academy and study nuclear power. My maternal grandfather, Arthur Sheely, whose role in my being accepted at the Naval Academy I will never know. He is responsible for planting in me the seeds of a meticulous attention to detail. And finally, my loving wife, Kimberly, whose faith in my abilities has never flinched through the good times and the bad, through the challenges and the successes of a career leading to command. Little did we realize that the phone call that announced that I had made captain would take us from Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard all the way back to Philadelphia. A little more than 2 weeks ago, I was standing along I-5 in California in the vast expanse of Nowheresville between Paso Robles and Los Angeles, looking up at one of the most beautiful star-filled nights I have ever seen, wondering why at midnight I was not in my hotel room in Los Angeles, and why in my personal life I had just violated most of the command philosophy that I am about to publish. I was standing in that beautiful, desolate setting because I had blown a piston in a 1987 Jeep, lost all of the oil, and had overheated the engine. Needless to say, 300 miles into a 3,300-mile journey, this is not the position you want to be in with a vehicle that can no longer be driven. How did I get into this predicament, and what are the lessons that I most painfully learned that I'm going to apply to the mission of NSEO? The role of NSEO, as I have defined it, is to provide certified parts to the mechanic in a timely manner at the requisite cost. To fulfill this mission, NSEO must focus on three key areas. First, communications. Second, process surveillance. And third, personal mastery. Now, back to the Jeep. My wife had clearly communicated her doubts. Note that I'm violating Admiral Roselli's last charge about the reliability of the Jeep. I, being the superstar backyard mechanic that I was, had clearly allowed my ego to get ahead of sound judgment and had assured her that the Jeep could make it from California to Lakehurst, New Jersey. Further, I promised my son John Paul that we would make the trip in the Jeep, not in a more reliable, slightly less fun to ride in car, but it would be the great Jeep adventure. Lessons learned. Make realistic plans that are not based upon emotion. And when you have overpromised, have the moral courage to tell the revised truth. So the forensic analysis of the Jeep may have to wait for quite some time before the true cause of the failure is known. But I suspect that it may be attributable to the pinging sound coming from the engine at greater than 55 miles per hour. I had a timing light in the Jeep. I had fully intended to check the timing on the engine before we left Monterey, but being behind schedule by at least 6 hours, I elected not to spend the time to validate that the engine was in correct timing before we took off. Was the poor timing the result of the engine failure? The world may never know. But the lesson learned is, take the time you need to certify your results. The half hour that I saved in not timing the engine before I departed cost me at least 8 hours and a blown engine. As a Navy Special Emphasis operation, taking the extra day to certify the component and verify that the paperwork is correct may save the Navy 8 weeks in getting that needed part on the shelf ready for issue. As the Navy's quality assurance experts in the factories of America, it is incumbent upon the NSEO organization to provide oversight of the manufacturing processes. Further, we must be constantly reviewing our own processes and auditing those internal processes so that we can be the best organization that we can be. It was once defined to me that it takes a certain amount of skill to perform a task. To oversee someone else performing that same task requires even greater skill to detect the mistake of the person executing the craft or skill. The quality assurance representatives of the Navy Special Emphasis operation must continually improve their knowledge of their particular craft to enable them to provide the required oversight necessary to achieve the quality needed for the United States Navy. NSEO QARs, administrative contract officers, and industrial specialists must continually develop their personal expertise to be able to provide that needed oversight to the factories of America. Within our product lines of subsafe material and Navy nuclear propulsion material, NSEO QARs are the Navy's quality experts. They are our only experts. Now finally, lest you think that I'm fooled, and a high-risk evolution such as driving a 25-year-old Jeep across country when in the past 5 years the greatest distance it had driven was from San Diego to Monterey, and it had done that once when it came back from Hawaii, I did have a risk mitigation plan. If the Jeep died in the middle of the United States, not on the coast, I would rent a truck, hook up the Jeep to the truck, and tow it home. All the required hardware had been bought and installed on the Jeep so that it could be towed. And based upon my experience from 10 years ago, you could go to a car rental agency or U-Haul and rent a pickup truck that had a 2-inch receiver to enable you to tow anything. I had violated one of my own tenets learned from the readings of General George S. Patton. Know what you know and know how you know it. As it turned out, you can no longer rent a pickup truck with a 2-inch receiver. It turned out that the least expensive option to get me to the East Coast and to disposition the Jeep was for my loving wife to drive our minivan from Lakehurst, New Jersey, all the way back to Los Angeles, a journey we had just completed 4 weeks earlier, so that I could tow the wounded Jeep back home to Lakehurst and she could fly back trying to put our house back together. Which brings me to my final personal lesson learned. If you are going to be stupid, marry someone who loves you no matter how stupid you are. In summary, communicate frequently, including the risk and your risk mitigation strategy should a risky course of action be the only solution. Continuously perform process surveillances, not only of the processes that you have oversight of, but of your own internal processes. Excellence does not just happen. It is continually verified. For an organization to excel, it must have the ability to self-assess. Finally, the personnel of the Navy Special Emphasis Office must accept nothing less than personal excellence. It is one thing to have mastered a skill to perform a task. To provide the oversight of someone else performing the task requires an even greater mastery of that skill. As I stood looking at the stars and the magnificent desolation of the California desert, I wondered if I could truly lead a virtual organization such as NSEO with over 270 personnel in 43 states and over 750 factories across the country. My conclusion was that given the broad base of support I have from the leadership of NAVC, many of whom I have worked for previously, and for the number of people who want NSEO to be successful, that I could be successful in spite of just personally violating the key philosophies needed for NSEO to be successful. As we conclude the Assumption of Command ceremony, I ask all of my staff to enjoy these 15 minutes of alignment between NAVC and DCMA. The focus is not upon me, but that for the next 3 years, Navy Special Emphasis Operation under my leadership will be successful. Recognize that despite NAVC's and Navy Special Emphasis Operations professional differences, that this alignment will exist tomorrow and 365 days from now, and that NSEO provide certified parts to the mechanic in a timely manner at the requisite cost. Thank you.